Get down. Claire Bennett shouted, and the boy moved half a second, before the ballroom window behind him burst into a glittering rain of safety glass. The sound cracked through the Blackridge Grand Hotel so sharply that for one impossible heartbeat, nobody moved. Claire did. She crossed the few feet between them, caught the boy around the shoulders, and pulled him behind a heavy banquet table as frightened voices rose across the ballroom. Guests hurried toward the exits. Chairs scraped across polished marble. Somewhere, an alarm began pulsing through the building, steady and cold. The boy couldn't have been older than 7. Dark blonde hair fell across his forehead, and his pale blue eyes were fixed on the place where he had been standing seconds earlier. "Hey," Claire whispered, keeping her voice level even as her heartbeat hammered against her ribs. "Look at me." "Not the window." "Me?" His gaze found hers. "That's it. Stay with me. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you believe that kindness is power, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love redeems the broken. Now, back to Claire. 3 hours earlier, no one in that ballroom had known her name. Claire Bennett was 24, an omega from a pack that preferred to forget she had ever belonged to it, and invisibility had become something she wore as naturally as the plain grey uniform buttoned neatly at her throat. At Blackridge, that was useful. Servers entered through side doors, walked along walls, refilled glasses, collected plates, and disappeared before important people remembered seeing them. Claire had become very good at disappearing. "Staff stays clear of the royal section tonight," her supervisor had warned before the gala. "Especially you." Claire hadn't asked what especially you meant. She already knew. Omega. Rejected. Unimportant. 3 words people rarely needed to say aloud when their eyes could say them instead. So she worked quietly beneath crystal chandeliers, while wealthy pack leaders talked about alliances and territory, as if the world belonged entirely to them. Then she noticed the boy. He sat alone near a tall window, dressed too formally for someone his age, watching the room with the careful stillness of a child accustomed to adults speaking around him instead of to him. His spoon slipped from the table and landed near Claire's shoe. She picked it up. "I think this escaped," she said softly. The boy almost smiled. Almost. Claire crouched to place it beside his plate, and that was when she saw something reflected in the dark window behind him. A tiny red point moved across the glass, vanished, then appeared against the front of his navy jacket. Claire's breath stopped. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why someone might be watching him. She knew only that every instinct inside her screamed the same command. "Move." Claire lunged forward. "Get down." And the night changed. 3 hours before the alarm shattered the evening, Claire Bennett had been standing beneath the service entrance clock, smoothing the front of her grey uniform, while everyone else hurried past her. Blackridge Grand Hotel had never looked more intimidating. The marble floors gleamed beneath warm chandeliers, white roses filled silver arrangements along the ballroom entrance, and through the tall windows the mountains were disappearing into a cold Colorado evening. Claire could smell coffee drifting from the kitchen, expensive perfume from arriving guests, and the faint pine scent carried inside whenever the revolving doors opened. She preferred the kitchen. Kitchens had rules she understood. Carry this. Clean that. Keep moving. Ballrooms were different. Ballrooms had people who could decide what you were worth with one glance. Bennett. Claire turned. Her supervisor, Margaret Cole, stood beside the service station holding a clipboard against her chest. "You are assigned to the west tables. Stay away from the royal section." Claire nodded. "Understood." Margaret hesitated. Her eyes dropped briefly toward the small Omega identification pin required on Claire's uniform. Tonight is important. Pack leaders are here from 6 territories. We cannot afford problems. Claire felt the familiar pressure settle behind her ribs. She had not caused a problem. Not tonight. Not during the 11 months she had worked at Blackridge. But people rarely needed evidence when they had already decided what an Omega represented. I will do my job, Claire said. Margaret gave a tight nod and walked away. Claire released the breath she had been holding. Once, words like those would have followed her home. Now she had learned to leave them where they were spoken. She lifted a tray of sparkling water and entered the ballroom. Nearly 200 guests filled the room. Men in dark suits stood beneath banners bearing old pack crests. Women in evening gowns gathered near the raised platform. Security officers remained positioned beside every entrance, their attention moving constantly through the crowd. Claire kept her eyes lowered just enough to appear respectful without becoming afraid. She moved from table to table, replacing glasses and collecting empty plates. Invisible. Efficient. Safe. Then she noticed the boy near the west windows. He was alone. That seemed strange in a room where children of important families usually had adults hovering within arm's reach. He wore a navy jacket with a small silver wolf embroidered near the collar, but Claire did not recognize the symbol. His hands rested carefully in his lap, while he watched other children laughing near the dessert table. There was something in his expression Claire recognized immediately. Not sadness exactly. The practiced stillness of someone trying not to need anyone. A server passed his table without noticing his empty water glass. Claire stopped. Margaret's warning returned instantly. Stay away from the royal section. Claire glanced at the table number. She was still within her assigned area. Close enough. She filled the boy's glass. Thank you, he said. His voice was quiet. You are welcome. His spoon slipped from the table and tapped against the marble near Claire's shoe. She bent to retrieve it. I think this escaped. This time, the boy smiled. It was small, uncertain, but real. Claire smiled back. Neither of them noticed the security officer near the ballroom doors suddenly touch his earpiece. Neither noticed another guard turn toward the windows. Claire only saw the boy. And several minutes later, when the room changed forever, that simple kindness would be the reason she was standing close enough to see the warning before anyone else did. For the next several minutes, Claire told herself the boy was simply shy. It was easier than wondering why a child surrounded by nearly 200 people could look so completely alone. She moved through the west tables with practiced efficiency, but her attention kept returning to him. He never reached for the elaborate desserts arranged beneath glass domes. He never joined the children gathering near the musicians. Whenever laughter rose too loudly, his shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. Claire recognized that reaction, because she had spent years teaching herself the same trick: become still, become quiet, give nobody a reason to notice you. When she returned with a fresh pitcher of water, the boy was studying the white roses at the center of his table. Do you work here every night? He asked. Claire glanced toward Margaret before answering. Most nights. Do you like it? The question surprised her. Adults usually asked what she did. Children sometimes asked whether she liked doing it. I like the people in the kitchen, Claire said. And the chocolate cake is difficult to argue with. His mouth curved. I am not supposed to have chocolate cake. That sounds serious. My dad says sugar makes me impossible. Claire lowered her voice as though sharing classified information. Your dad might be right. The boy finally laughed, soft enough that nobody nearby turned. Something inside Claire loosened. "What is your name?" he asked. "Claire." He looked down at his hands before answering. "Noah." "No last name." Claire did not press. "Nice to meet you, Noah." A man at the neighboring table raised 2 fingers without looking at her, summoning her toward an empty glass. Claire straightened immediately. "Duty calls." "Claire." She stopped. Noah's expression had changed. "Will you come back?" Such a small question should not have carried so much weight. Claire looked around. Security officers stood near every major entrance. Well-dressed adults occupied every table. Noah was obviously not abandoned. Yet none of them seemed to notice that he was asking a stranger not to disappear. "I will be around," she promised. For the next 20 minutes, Claire worked while Noah remained at the edge of her awareness. She noticed a tall security officer approach him once, lean down, and speak quietly. Noah nodded, but the moment the officer walked away, the loneliness returned to his face. Claire wondered where his father was. She wondered why a 7-year-old needed security at a charity gala. Then the ballroom doors opened. Conversation softened almost instantly. Several guests rose. Claire could not see who had entered because a cluster of pack leaders blocked her view, but she felt the change move through the room like cold air beneath a door. Powerful wolves reacted to someone more powerful. Margaret appeared beside Claire. "West Service Station. Now." Claire obeyed, carrying her tray toward the wall. As she passed Noah's table, she noticed him looking toward the entrance. For the first time that evening, relief brightened his face. "Dad," he whispered. Claire followed his gaze, but another server stepped between them. Then a champagne glass fell somewhere near the ballroom doors and shattered against the floor. One security officer touched his earpiece. Another turned sharply toward the west windows. Claire slowed. Nothing seemed wrong. Music continued. Guests resumed talking. Yet Noah's smile disappeared. Claire saw his fingers close around the edge of the table. She was only 15 feet away when his spoon slipped to the floor again. He looked toward her. Claire took one step in his direction, unaware that within minutes, every person in the ballroom would be running away from danger, while she would be moving toward him. The second warning came without a voice. Claire saw it in the security officers first. One near the ballroom entrance stopped listening to the guest speaking beside him and pressed 2 fingers against his earpiece. Another moved quickly toward the west windows. Across the room, a third officer reached for Noah, but a wave of confused guests suddenly crossed between them as the fire alarm began to pulse overhead. Then Claire saw the red point again. It moved across the dark window, crossed the white tablecloth, and settled against Noah's navy jacket. Everything inside her went cold. "Get down." Claire covered the 15 feet between them before she understood she had started running. She caught Noah around the shoulders and pulled him below the table just as a sharp crack echoed through the ballroom. Safety glass scattered across the carpet behind them. Screams rose instantly. Chairs overturned. Nearly 200 guests became one frightened current pushing toward the nearest exits. "Claire." Noah grabbed her sleeve. "I am here." She kept herself between him and the windows. Another sharp sound came from somewhere outside, followed by security officers ordering everyone away from the glass. Claire expected the danger to move toward the crowd. It did not. A second window several yards from Noah's table suddenly fractured. Claire stared at it, and understanding arrived with terrifying clarity. The first impact had been near Noah. The second had followed where she had moved him. This was not random panic. Someone was tracking the boy. We have to move. My dad is here. Noah twisted toward the ballroom entrance. Claire caught his hand. Your dad will be looking for you. We are going somewhere safer, so he can find you. She did not know whether that was true, but Noah needed something stronger than fear to hold on to. Claire scanned the room. The main exits were crowded. Security was trying to create protected lanes, but Claire could not tell which officers belonged to whom. The service door behind the West Station was less than 20 feet away. She knew every hallway beyond it. Laundry access. Kitchen storage. Employee stairs. An old delivery corridor leading toward the underground loading area. Places guests never saw. Claire rose into a crouch and pulled Noah with her. Stay close. They moved behind overturned tables while the alarm continued its steady rhythm. Noah's fingers locked around hers. They were 10 feet from the service door when a security officer appeared ahead of them. Stop. Bring the boy here. Claire almost obeyed. Then Noah froze. Not slowed. Froze. His hand became rigid inside hers. No, he whispered. Claire looked at him. His face had gone pale. Do you know him? Noah shook his head. The officer stepped closer. I said bring him to me. Something in his tone made Claire's instincts tighten. Every hotel security officer wore a silver Blackridge identification badge above the left pocket. This man's jacket had the correct color, the correct cut, even the correct radio. But no badge. Claire took one slow step backward. His expression changed. Barely. Enough. Run, Claire whispered. She turned with Noah and pushed through the service door. They raced into the narrow hallway beyond it, leaving the chandeliers and frightened voices behind. Their shoes struck the tile in quick uneven beats. Claire knew the building. That was the only advantage she had. She turned left, then right, guiding Noah past stacked linens and silent kitchen carts. Behind them, the service door opened. Footsteps entered the hallway. Claire did not look back. She tightened her grip around Noah's hand and kept moving, because now she understood something worse than the danger outside the windows. Someone inside the hotel knew exactly who Noah was. The hallway swallowed them in fluorescent light, and the distant pulse of the alarm. Claire kept Noah close as they hurried past shelves of folded tablecloths and rolling carts stacked with clean dishes. Behind them, footsteps echoed against the tile. Not running. Following. That frightened her more. Whoever had entered the service corridor believed there was nowhere for them to go. Claire knew better. She had spent 11 months learning every forgotten corner of Blackridge Grand Hotel, because invisible employees learned buildings differently from guests. She knew which stairwell door stuck during cold weather, which pantry connected to the banquet kitchen, and which storage rooms had locks on the inside. Claire. Noah was struggling to keep pace. She slowed immediately. I am right here. Where are we going? Somewhere quiet. Claire turned at the next intersection and guided him through a narrow passage used for catering deliveries. The music from the ballroom had vanished completely. Here there was only the hum of ventilation and their breathing. Claire glanced down and noticed a shallow scrape across her hand from the broken safety glass. Nothing serious, but Noah saw it too. You are hurt. I am okay. Because of me. Claire stopped. His face carried something no 7-year-old should have been trying to hold. Guilt. She crouched until they were eye level. Listen to me, Noah. None of this is because of you. His lower lip trembled. People always say I have to be careful. Then tonight we are going to be very careful together. A sound came from the corridor behind them. A door opening. Claire stood. Come on. They reached an old cold storage room near the rear kitchen. It had not been used for food in months and now held unopened boxes of linens, seasonal decorations, and banquet supplies. Claire slipped inside with Noah and pulled the door nearly closed, leaving only a narrow gap. Darkness settled around them. Noah's breathing became quick. Claire found his hand. Can you hear me? Yes. Good. Keep listening to my voice. The footsteps grew closer. Claire could hear a radio somewhere outside, but no clear words came through it. Noah leaned against her side. Are you going to leave? The question was almost too quiet to hear. Claire looked toward the thin line of hallway light beneath the door. Every sensible instinct told her to find help. Every older wound inside her remembered what it felt like when people decided someone else would eventually come. She would not make that choice for Noah. Not while I am breathing, she whispered. His fingers tightened around hers. The footsteps stopped outside. Claire held perfectly still. The handle moved once. Noah inhaled sharply. Claire placed one finger gently against her lips, then pointed behind the stacked linen boxes. He understood. He slipped into the narrow space and crouched there, hidden from the doorway. The handle moved again. Claire looked around and saw another door at the rear of the room, an old staff exit leading toward the laundry passage. An idea formed. Dangerous, but simple. If whoever was outside believed Noah had gone through that door, they might follow the wrong trail. Claire took off her gray service jacket and placed it near the rear exit where it would be visible. Then she quietly moved a lightweight supply cart several inches from the wall, leaving the path toward the laundry corridor looking recently disturbed. Noah watched her from behind the boxes. His eyes widened when he understood. Claire returned to him and squeezed his hand once. Whatever happens, stay here until someone you know comes for you. What about you? Claire looked at the front door as the handle began to turn again. For most of her life, powerful people had called her weak, because she was an Omega. At that moment, weakness had nothing to do with rank. It was simply the choice to protect yourself when a frightened child needed you more. Claire gave Noah the calmest smile she could manage. Then she moved toward the rear exit, ready to make sure the footsteps followed her instead. Claire slipped through the rear exit and pulled the door almost closed behind her, careful not to let the latch click. The laundry passage stretched ahead beneath pale ceiling lights, narrow and empty, with white carts parked along one wall and closed service doors lining the other. She could still feel Noah's small hand in hers even though he was 20 feet behind her now, hidden in darkness. Stay there, she thought. Please stay there. The cold storage door opened behind her. Claire heard it clearly. She forced herself to walk 3 more steps before letting her shoes strike the tile harder. The sound carried. A moment later, footsteps followed. Her plan had worked. That realization brought no relief. Claire turned the corner and moved faster. She knew the passage divided ahead. Left led toward the main kitchen and hundreds of frightened guests. Right descended toward the old laundry level, where few employees worked during evening events. She chose right. If someone was following her, she would take them as far from Noah as possible. The stairwell smelled faintly of detergent and concrete. Claire descended 1 flight, pushed through another door, and entered a long basement corridor. Her lungs tightened from the pace, but she kept moving. Behind her, the stairwell door opened. Stop. The voice was calm. Too calm. Claire did not turn around. Hotel security. She kept going. You are heading into a restricted area. Claire reached the next intersection and stopped, just long enough to glance at the polished metal panel of a utility cabinet. The reflection was blurred, but she could see the man approximately 40 feet behind her. Same dark jacket. Same radio. No silver identification badge. He was alone. Claire turned left. His footsteps quickened. Claire's fear sharpened into something cleaner. Focus. She passed the employee locker room, the maintenance office, and a row of industrial washers humming behind closed doors. Then she saw what she needed, an empty housekeeping cart near the intersection ahead. Claire pushed it several feet across the corridor and left it angled toward the loading area, then quietly slipped through a side door marked linen processing. She held her breath. Footsteps approached. Stopped. Then continued toward the loading area. Claire closed her eyes for 1 second. He had followed the false path. She reached for the wall phone beside the linen shelves and lifted the receiver. No dial tone. The alarm system must have interrupted the internal line. Claire stared at it, frustration rising in her throat. Then a new sound rolled through the building above her. Not the alarm. Voices. Many of them. Firm commands carried faintly through the ventilation system, followed by the heavy rhythm of organized movement. Something had changed upstairs. Claire stepped toward the door, but a low vibration passed through the air, so subtle she almost mistook it for machinery. Her Omega instincts recognized it before her mind did. Alpha authority. Powerful enough that her body went still. Somewhere above, someone had entered the hotel, whose presence made every dominant wolf in the building pay attention. Claire did not know his name yet. She did not know that the man crossing the ruined ballroom had arrived expecting to attend a charity gala, and had instead found his security detail in chaos and his son's chair empty. Adrian Cross stopped beside Noah's abandoned table. The room quieted around him. His face revealed almost nothing, but every guard within hearing distance straightened. "Where is my son?" No one answered quickly enough. Adrian's pale grey eyes moved to the shattered west window, then to the spoon lying on the marble floor. A royal security officer approached. "Your Majesty, we lost visual contact during the evacuation." A female hotel employee was seen taking him through the west service door. Adrian turned. "Who?" "Claire Bennett. Omega 24. Hotel staff." Another officer stepped forward. "There is more." Someone wearing a security uniform followed them. "He was not part of our detail." Silence fell. Adrian looked toward the service entrance. Something ancient and protective shifted behind his controlled expression. "Seal the hotel," he said. "Find my son." Then he paused, his gaze fixed on the dark corridor where Claire had disappeared. "And find Claire Bennett." Claire waited until the footsteps faded toward the loading area, before easing open the linen room door. The basement corridor looked empty, but she no longer trusted appearances. Every fluorescent light seemed too bright. Every humming machine sounded like movement. She needed to get back to Noah. That thought overruled everything else. She had drawn the stranger away, but she had also left a frightened 7-year-old alone in a dark storage room. Claire moved quickly toward the stairs, choosing a different route through the employee locker corridor. Her scraped hand had begun to sting, and her breathing still felt too shallow, but neither mattered. She reached the stairwell and climbed. Halfway up, heavy footsteps sounded above her. Claire stopped. Several people were descending. She backed toward the wall, searching for another exit, when a voice called, "Claire Bennett." Her stomach tightened. "Who is asking?" 3 men appeared on the landing in dark uniforms. Unlike the stranger, each wore the silver Blackridge identification badge above the left pocket. One slowly raised both hands, where she could see them. Royal Security. We are looking for Noah Cross. Cross. Claire knew that name. Everyone did. Her thoughts seemed to stop all at once. Adrian Cross. The Alpha King, whose authority stretched across 6 territories. The man-pack leaders mentioned carefully even when he was hundreds of miles away. Claire stared at the officers. Noah Cross. The King's son, the officer confirmed. For one stunned second, Claire saw Noah exactly as he had been at the table, quietly asking whether she would come back. Not a prince. Not someone protected by a royal title. Just a lonely little boy whose spoon had fallen to the floor. He is safe, Claire said. The officers visibly relaxed. Where? Claire hesitated. I need to see someone Noah recognizes first. One officer exchanged a glance with another, but the leader nodded. Fair enough. A 4th figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Margaret. Claire had never been so relieved to see her supervisor. Claire. Margaret hurried down several steps. Thank goodness. Are you all right? I am fine. Noah is hidden near the rear kitchen. Claire turned to the officers. Come with me. They moved quickly through the service corridors. When they reached the cold storage room, Claire knocked 3 times before opening the door. Noah. It is me. Silence. Then a small voice came from behind the linen boxes. Claire. He emerged slowly, saw her, and ran forward. Claire dropped to one knee as Noah wrapped his arms around her. You came back. The words struck deeper than she expected. I told you I would. The security officers began speaking into their radios. Claire heard phrases she barely understood through the sudden rush of relief. Prince secure. West storage. Notify His Majesty. Noah pulled back. Where is my dad? Before anyone could answer, footsteps approached from the corridor. This time no one panicked. Instead, every officer straightened. Margaret lowered her eyes. Even the air seemed to change. Claire stood as a tall man entered the doorway. Adrian Cross wore a black suit without decoration, but he needed no crown to explain who he was. His dark hair was swept back from a pale, controlled face, and his grey eyes searched the room with a focus that made everyone else disappear. Then he saw Noah. The cold authority vanished for one heartbeat. Dad. Noah ran to him. Adrian dropped immediately to his son's level and pulled him close. He said nothing at first. His hand rested against the back of Noah's head as though confirming for himself that the boy was truly there. Then Noah whispered something. Adrian's eyes lifted. They found Claire across the room. She expected gratitude. Perhaps suspicion. Instead, the Alpha King became completely still. His wolf had caught something beneath detergent, cold air and fear. Claire's scent. Adrian slowly rose, one hand remaining on Noah's shoulder. For reasons Claire could not understand, the most powerful man in 6 territories looked at her as if the entire night had just changed again. Adrian Cross did not ask Claire what she had done. Noah told him first. She pushed me down before the window broke, he said, still holding his father's hand. Then she took me through the staff hallway, because someone was following us. Adrian's gaze remained on Claire. Someone followed you. Claire nodded. A man wearing a security uniform. He did not have the silver identification badge. Every officer in the room became more alert. Adrian turned toward the head of his detail. How many uniforms are unaccounted for? We are checking now, Your Majesty. Check faster. His voice never rose. It did not need to. The officer immediately stepped into the corridor and spoke into his radio. Claire finally understood why entire packs lowered their voices when they mentioned Adrian Cross. His power was not loud. It was controlled, concentrated, like winter held behind a closed door. Noah tugged gently at his father's sleeve. Claire made him follow her. Adrian looked down. What do you mean? Noah pointed toward Claire's missing service jacket. She hid me behind the boxes. Then she left her jacket by the other door, so he would think we went that way. Adrian's expression changed. It was small enough that Claire might have missed it if she had not been watching him. His jaw tightened. His gray eyes dropped to the scrape across her hand, then returned to her face. You deliberately drew him away from my son. Claire suddenly felt uncomfortable beneath everyone's attention. I knew the hotel better than he did. That was not my question. No. Her voice softened. But yes. I did. Silence settled over the storage room. Adrian studied her, as if the answer had created a problem he could not immediately solve. Why? Claire blinked. Why what? Why would you do that? The question was not suspicious. That made it harder to answer. Claire looked at Noah. His face was pale with exhaustion, but he was safe. That was enough. Because he was scared. Adrian said nothing. Claire continued quietly. He did not know where you were. He did not know who he could trust. I was already there. Something flickered behind Adrian's eyes. Before he could respond, a security officer returned. Your Majesty, we have confirmed the uniform was taken from an employee locker. The man Claire described was not hotel staff or royal security. Have you found him? Not yet. The building is sealed. Another officer appeared behind him carrying a tablet. Sir, there is something else. Adrian took it. Claire watched his eyes move across the screen. Explain. The first disturbance near the east entrance appears to have been deliberate. It pulled part of the security detail away from the west side less than 2 minutes before the window incident. Claire felt the cold return to her stomach. Adrian looked toward Noah. So this was planned. That is our assessment. And whoever planned it knew his seating location. No one answered. They did not need to. Claire understood the implication at the same moment Adrian did. Someone had known exactly where Noah would be. Someone had known exactly when security would move. Adrian handed the tablet back. Noah leaves with me. Double escort. Noah immediately looked at Claire. She comes too. Claire opened her mouth. Noah, I work here. Not tonight. His fingers closed around hers before she could step away. Adrian looked at their joined hands. For the first time, the Alpha King's composure seemed less certain. Then the officer with the tablet spoke again. Your Majesty, Claire may need protection as well. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Why? The officer turned the screen toward them. A hallway camera showed Claire leading Noah through the service door. Several seconds later, the false security officer appeared. Before following them, he stopped and looked directly toward the camera. Then his lips moved. The recording had no sound, but Claire did not need it. She could read the 2 words clearly. Claire Bennett. The room seemed to lose all warmth. Adrian stepped closer to her, his voice low and absolute. You are not staying here. Claire stared at the frozen image on the tablet, until the man's silent words seemed to echo inside her head. Claire Bennett. He had known her name before following Noah into the service corridor. That changed everything. She had believed she was a stranger who happened to step into someone else's danger. Now the danger had looked directly into a camera and named her. "I do not understand," she whispered. Adrian's attention shifted from the screen to her. "Did you recognize him?" "No." Claire forced herself to study the image again. The man's face was partially turned, his features blurred by the hallway camera, but something about the way he stood bothered her. She searched her memory and found nothing she trusted. "I have never seen him before." "That does not mean he has never seen you." Adrian's words were quiet. Noah moved closer to Claire, still holding her hand. She looked down and immediately softened her expression. Whatever this meant, the boy had already carried enough fear for one night. "You are safe now," she told him. Noah looked toward his father. "Is Claire safe?" Adrian answered without hesitation. "She will be." There was something absolute in those 3 words. Claire almost protested. She did not belong in royal security arrangements. She did not belong anywhere near Adrian Cross. Yet 20 minutes later, she was walking through a private underground entrance beneath the hotel, surrounded by officers whose attention never stopped moving. A black sport utility vehicle waited beyond the secured doors. Cold Colorado air swept through the garage as they approached. Noah climbed inside first, then immediately turned and reached toward Claire. "Sit with me." Claire hesitated. Adrian stood beside the open door. "Go ahead." She entered. Noah settled beside her, finally allowing exhaustion to replace vigilance. Adrian took the seat across from them. As the vehicle moved away from Blackridge, city lights slid across the tinted windows. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Noah's head gradually leaned against Claire's arm. She remained perfectly still. Adrian noticed. "He does not trust easily," he said. Claire looked at the sleeping boy. "Neither do I." The faintest change touched Adrian's expression. Not a smile. Something closer to recognition. "Then why did you trust him?" "He is 7. Claire looked back at Adrian. Children should not have to earn kindness. The Alpha King went silent. The drive lasted nearly 40 minutes. Blackridge Palace appeared beyond tall iron gates and acres of dark pine, less like a fairy tale castle than an enormous stone estate built to survive Colorado winters. Security lights illuminated the long driveway. Guards opened the gates before the vehicle slowed. Claire felt suddenly aware of her plain uniform, her scraped hand, and the fact that she had never expected to see this place from anywhere except photographs. Noah woke when the vehicle stopped. "Are you leaving?" he asked immediately. Claire glanced at Adrian. "I probably should." "No." Noah's voice was tired but certain. Adrian opened his door. "No one is leaving tonight." Claire stepped onto the stone driveway. "Your Majesty, I appreciate the protection, but I have an apartment. I have work tomorrow. Your supervisor has already been informed." "You called Margaret?" "My security chief did." Claire almost laughed from disbelief. "Of course he did." For the first time, Adrian's mouth nearly curved. Then an officer approached from the house carrying the same tablet. "Your Majesty, we recovered additional footage." Adrian's expression hardened. "Show me." Claire watched the screen. The image showed the false officer entering an employee area hours before the gala. He paused beside Claire's locker. Then he placed something inside. Claire's breath caught. Adrian looked at her. Your locker. She nodded. The officer enlarged the image. A small white envelope was visible in the man's hand. Adrian turned toward the security team. Recover it. Nobody opens it until it is cleared. Noah slipped his hand into Claire's again. She stared at the screen, trying to understand why a stranger had known her name before she had ever noticed Noah. Adrian stepped beside them, his presence suddenly less like royal authority and more like a shield. Whatever this is, he said quietly, it did not begin tonight. Claire barely slept. The guest room prepared for her was larger than her entire apartment, with a fireplace, heavy curtains, and windows overlooking miles of dark pine, but comfort could not quiet her thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the white envelope disappearing into her locker. At 6:30 the next morning, a soft knock brought her upright. Claire. Noah's voice came through the door. She opened it to find him standing beside a royal security officer, dressed in a blue sweater, and holding 2 mugs. I brought hot chocolate, he said. Claire looked at the second mug. At 6:30 in the morning. Dad said no. Noah lowered his voice. Mrs. Parker said yes. Claire smiled despite herself. Mrs. Parker sounds powerful. She runs the kitchen. Then she probably is. Noah stepped inside, and for 10 quiet minutes the palace stopped feeling like a place built for kings. He told Claire about school, his favorite baseball team, and a science project involving a model volcano that had apparently gone very wrong. Claire listened until a security officer appeared at the doorway. Miss Bennet, His Majesty would like to see you. Noah immediately stood. I am coming. The officer almost smiled. He expected that. They crossed the palace through broad hallways washed with morning light. Claire expected Adrian to be waiting in some intimidating throne room. Instead, they found him in a private study beside a wooden table covered with photographs, security reports, and a sealed evidence bag containing the envelope from her locker. Adrian looked as though he had not slept at all. Good morning, he said. Claire glanced at the evidence bag. I am guessing it is not. Adrian pulled out a chair for her. The envelope was cleared an hour ago. A security officer opened the evidence bag and placed the envelope on the table. Claire's name was written across the front in black ink. No address. No message outside. Her fingers hesitated before opening it. Inside was a photograph. Claire stopped breathing for a moment. The picture was old, probably taken 15 years earlier. A group of wolves in human form stood outside a weathered lodge beneath a familiar wooden sign. Silver Creek Pack. Her old home. Claire was 9 years old in the photograph, standing beside her mother. Where did they get this? She whispered. Adrian watched her carefully. That is what I need you to tell me. Claire turned the photograph over. 4 words had been written on the back. She read them twice before understanding them. You were never forgotten. Noah leaned closer, but Adrian gently moved the photograph away before the boy could see more. Do you recognize anyone else? Claire studied the faces. Most belonged to people she had spent years trying not to remember. Then her eyes stopped on a man standing near the far edge of the photograph. Younger. Clean-shaven. Different hair. But the posture was unmistakable. Her stomach tightened. Him. Adrian came around the table. Claire pointed. His name was Daniel Mercer. He worked for our pack council. He disappeared around the time my mother died. The room became very quiet. Adrian's security chief opened a folder. Daniel Mercer officially died 14 years ago. Claire looked up. That is impossible. There is more, Adrian said. He placed a still image from the hotel camera beside the old photograph. The faces were separated by years, but the eyes matched. Claire felt the answer before anyone spoke it. Daniel Mercer was the man who had followed them. Noah reached for Claire's hand. Adrian noticed the movement, then looked back at her. He knew you. He knew my son's schedule. And he wanted you both in the same building. Claire stared at the photographs. Why? Adrian's grey eyes hardened. That is what we are going to find out. A knock interrupted them. Another officer entered carrying a file. Your Majesty, the council is assembled. They are demanding an explanation for why Miss Bennet is under royal protection. Claire felt the old instinct immediately. Make yourself smaller. Step away before powerful people decide you do not belong. She started to rise. Adrian placed one hand on the back of the empty chair beside her, not touching Claire, but stopping her with his voice. Stay. They do not want me here. That has never been the same thing as you not belonging here. Claire looked at him. For the first time, Adrian's expression held no mystery. Only certainty. Then he opened the study doors himself and walked beside Claire toward the waiting council. The council chamber was colder than the rest of Blackridge Palace, though Claire suspected the temperature had little to do with the weather outside. 12 people sat around a long walnut table beneath tall windows overlooking the snow-dusted Colorado foothills. Every conversation stopped when Adrian entered. Claire walked beside him with Noah holding her hand, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any insult spoken aloud. She knew those looks. She had grown up beneath them. Curiosity first. Judgment second. An Omega in a plain borrowed sweater had entered a room built for people whose family names carried generations of power. Claire almost lowered her eyes. Almost. Then Noah squeezed her fingers, and she remembered him behind the linen boxes asking if she would come back. She kept her head up. Your Majesty, an older councilman began, rising from his chair. We were informed that an unidentified Omega was brought into the palace under full royal protection. Adrian stopped at the head of the table. Her name is Claire Bennet. The councilman glanced at Claire as though the correction were unnecessary. Of course. But considering last night's security breach, allowing a hotel employee direct access to Prince Noah without a complete background review seems highly irregular. Noah moved closer to Claire. Adrian noticed. She did not request access to my son. Nevertheless, she had it. Claire felt the words land exactly where they were intended. Suspicion disguised as procedure. She could have remained silent. Silence had protected her for years. But Noah had trusted her when the ballroom became chaos, and somehow that made hiding behind old habits feel impossible. Sir, Claire said, I did not know who Noah was when I helped him. Several council members looked at her. The older man lifted an eyebrow. That may be precisely the concern. Adrian's expression hardened, but Claire continued before he could speak. I saw a frightened child. That was enough. The room went still. Noah looked up at her. The councilman folded his hands. Miss Bennet, noble intentions do not answer security questions. You have a connection to Daniel Mercer, the same man now connected to the breach. Surely you understand why that raises concerns. Claire's stomach tightened. I was 9 years old when I last saw him. And yet he knew your name. Councilman Reeves. Adrian's voice cut through the room, quiet and unmistakable. Choose your next words carefully. Reeves paused. Claire turned toward Adrian, surprised by the warning in his tone. Your Majesty, my responsibility is to protect the royal family. So was hers last night. Adrian placed the security photograph on the table. While trained officers were being redirected, Claire recognized a threat, moved Noah to safety, identified an imposter, and deliberately led that man away from my son. No one interrupted. She did all of that without knowing his title. Without knowing his name. Without expecting recognition. Reeves looked down at the photograph. Courage does not establish trust. No, Adrian said. Actions do. Claire felt Noah release her hand. Before she could wonder why, he walked around the table and stood beside his father. She came back for me, he said. His small voice carried through the chamber. She promised she would, and she did. Adrian looked at his son for a long moment. Something softened in his face. Then his gaze returned to Claire. Why did you come back? Claire swallowed. She could have given the council an impressive answer about responsibility, or duty. None would have been true. Because he was waiting for me. Adrian went completely still. The simplicity of it seemed to reach somewhere authority could not. Noah crossed back to Claire and slipped his hand into hers again. Adrian watched them, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter. My entire life, people have protected this family because they feared the crown, wanted influence, or expected something in return. His grey eyes held Claire's. You protected my son before you knew there was anything to gain. Claire shook her head. He was never something to gain. For the first time, Adrian smiled. Barely. But it changed him. Then the chamber doors opened, and the security chief entered carrying a newly recovered file. His expression erased the fragile warmth instantly. Your Majesty, we found why Mercer targeted Miss Bennet. Claire's fingers tightened around Noah's. The security chief placed the file on the table. It concerns her mother. And something Silver Creek Pack, buried 15 years ago. The security chief placed the recovered file in front of Adrian, but Claire recognized the faded Silver Creek seal before anyone opened it. Her childhood returned in fragments, pine smoke in winter, her mother's hands braiding her hair before school, council doors closing whenever children passed through the lodge. Where did you find this? Claire asked. In Mercer's abandoned vehicle, the chief replied. Copies of these records were inside. Adrian opened the folder. The first page carried Claire's mother's name. Rebecca Bennet. Claire felt the room narrow around those two words. My mother died when I was 9. The chief nodded carefully. According to Silver Creek records, Rebecca worked as an administrative clerk for the Pack Council. Weeks before her death, she discovered financial transfers connected to an unauthorized network operating through several territories. Councilman Reeves leaned forward. What kind of network? We are still verifying that. What matters is that Daniel Mercer appears repeatedly in those records. Claire looked at the old photograph again. Mercer had always been there in her memories without importance, a man standing near council meetings, opening doors, carrying folders. Someone adults trusted enough to stop noticing. Adrian turned another page. Rebecca reported him. Yes, Your Majesty. But the report never reached regional authorities. Silver Creek sealed it internally. Claire's throat tightened. Why? Because someone on the council protected him. The answer landed softly, which somehow made it worse. Claire remembered the weeks after her mother's death, the whispers that Rebecca had been troubled, the way neighbors stopped visiting, the way Claire herself gradually became an embarrassment to the pack. By 18, after her rejection, leaving had seemed almost merciful. They wanted me gone, she whispered. Adrian looked at her. It appears they wanted you forgotten. Claire stared at the message from the envelope. You were never forgotten. Suddenly it sounded less like reassurance and more like a warning. Noah stepped closer until his shoulder touched her arm. Claire immediately covered his hand with hers. Adrian saw the gesture, and something cold passed through his expression before he addressed the council. Effective immediately, Claire Bennett remains under royal protection. Reeves shifted. Your Majesty, until we understand her connection to Mercer, perhaps keeping her separate from Prince Noah would be prudent. Noah's fingers tightened. Claire felt the old reflex return. Make this easier. Leave before anyone has to ask. She gently released Noah's hand. Maybe he is right. Noah looked up. No. Just until they know more. No. His voice cracked with fear he was trying to hide. Claire crouched beside him. You are safe here. Noah shook his head. I was supposed to be safe at the hotel. Claire had no answer. Adrian did. He stepped beside his son, then looked across the table at Reeves. You are asking me to separate Noah from the person he trusts, because someone else chose to target her. I am asking you to protect your family. Adrian's eyes moved to Claire. The room became utterly still. That is exactly what I am doing. Reeves frowned. Your Majesty. Adrian walked around the table until he stood beside Claire and Noah. His voice remained calm, but every person in the chamber heard the finality in it. Claire protected my son when titles meant nothing. She returned for him when leaving would have been easier. She is under this roof because Noah trusts her, and because I trust what she has shown me. Reeves started to speak. Adrian stopped him with one look. You will address her with respect. But she is not royal blood. Adrian glanced at Noah, then at Claire. Morning light caught in his grey eyes. No, he said. She is family. Nobody moved. Claire forgot how to breathe. Noah smiled and reached for her hand again, this time without hesitation. Around them, 12 powerful council members sat in stunned silence. Claire had spent most of her life being told where she did not belong. Now the most powerful alpha in 6 territories had answered them all with 2 words. Then the security chief's phone vibrated. He read the message, and the color drained from his face. Your Majesty. Adrian turned. What is it? The chief looked directly at Claire. Daniel Mercer has been located. Claire rose slowly. Where? The chief swallowed. At Silver Creek. And he is asking for Claire by name. For several seconds, Claire heard nothing except the quiet ticking of the council chamber clock. Silver Creek. The name had once meant home. Then it had meant rejection. Now it felt like a door someone had deliberately left open for 15 years. Why would Mercer ask for me, she said. The security chief glanced at Adrian before answering. He says he has something Rebecca Bennett left behind. Claire's breath caught. Her mother had been dead since Claire was 9. She had spent years believing there were no unanswered goodbyes, no hidden explanations, only memories growing softer around the edges. What something? He would not say. Claire turned toward the windows. Beyond the glass, morning sunlight touched the snow along the foothills, making the world outside look almost peaceful. She remembered her mother's voice telling her that fear was allowed to walk beside courage, as long as it never chose the direction. Claire had forgotten those words for years. I have to go. No, Adrian said. She looked at him. If he has something from my mother, I need to know. And if he is using that promise to bring you somewhere he controls, then what do you expect me to do? Stay here forever? Adrian's expression remained calm, but his grey eyes changed. I expect you to stop assuming you have to face everything alone. The words reached somewhere Claire had protected for too long. Before she could answer, Noah stepped between them. Are you going away? Claire crouched beside him. Only if it is safe. And you come back. There it was again. Not a demand. A question from a child who had learned that people could disappear without warning. Claire touched his shoulder gently. I came back once. Noah studied her face, then nodded. So you know the way. Claire smiled. I know the way. Adrian watched them in silence. Then he turned toward his security chief. No contact with Mercer until we control the location. Silver Creek leadership is not informed of our arrival until we are already inside their territory. Noah remains here with the palace detail. Understood, Your Majesty. Claire stood. Our arrival. Adrian looked at her as if there had never been another possibility. You are not going without me. You barely know me. I know what you did when my son needed someone. His voice lowered. That tells me more than most people reveal in years. The council members remained silent now. Claire realized something had shifted. Yesterday, she had carried trays through rooms where powerful people looked past her. This morning, those same kinds of people were waiting for her decision. She looked down at Noah's hand in hers, then at Adrian. All right. 2 hours later, Claire stood beneath the covered entrance of Blackridge Palace, as a cold mountain wind moved through the pines. A convoy waited on the circular drive. Noah had insisted on walking her outside. You promised, he reminded her. I remember. He hugged her, then hurried back toward Mrs. Parker waiting inside. Claire watched until the doors closed behind him. Adrian stood several feet away. For once, there were no council members, no questions, no frightened crowd. Only the two of them and the quiet winter morning. You called me family in there, Claire said. Adrian did not look away. I did. Why? He seemed to consider a dozen answers and reject them all. Because Noah already sees you that way. Claire waited. Something told her he was not finished. Adrian's gaze softened. And because when I thought I had lost the person who mattered most to me, I found him holding your hand. Claire felt warmth rise behind her ribs, unfamiliar and frightening in its gentleness. Adrian opened the vehicle door for her but suddenly stopped. His wolf had gone still inside him. Not restless. Not suspicious. Still. Claire's scent reached him beneath the pine and cold morning air, carrying that same impossible familiarity he had noticed at the hotel. This time, there was no chaos to blame it on. His eyes met hers. Claire saw something change in them. What is it? She asked. Adrian waited one heartbeat too long. Nothing. But as Claire climbed into the vehicle, he knew it was not nothing. Somewhere beneath rank, duty, and every wall he had built around his life, an ancient instinct had finally given the feeling a name. Mate.